Welcome to the Beyond the Diagnosis podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kylie Burton. If you have been told that your blood work is normal, yet you feel awful, well, this is the place for you, because whether you have a diagnosis or not, I'm going to teach you how to turn those normal labs into real answers, healing, and hope. So grab your blood work. Come join me. Welcome to the Beyond the Diagnosis podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kylie. We have a physical therapist with us today who's gone from PT to functional medicine. Why? Because she had her own health disaster to clean up, fix, and now she helps other people. So Dr. Marci, welcome on.
Thank you. It's great to be
here. Now, you know I'm all for taking the one-on-one out and going to the masses. And so you went from PT, you still do PT, physical therapy, 1 day a week. But now you're doing functional medicine and functional nutrition the bulk of the time. Let's go back to your story as a PT and then what happened to your health.
Okay. So as a PT, I pretty much had decided by age 12 that I was either going to be a PT or a large animal vet, and PT won out. And as a PT, I was seeing a lot of clients who just had chronic health stuff, and we could get them so far, but they weren't getting really better. So I kind of went back a little bit and leaned on my minor in nutrition and was like, okay, well, let's clean up some of the nutrition stuff and see if that doesn't help. And I was always giving people recommendations for how to clean up the inflammation in their body. And so it was a pretty easy thing for me with that background of having a minor in nutrition as well. But then I got pregnant in 2009, had twins in 2010, and just started really struggling with my health and couldn't figure it out. And, you know, I'm sure you were a chiropractor that was practicing chiropractic, and anytime something popped up in yourself, you're like, I know how to do this. I do this for people all the time. Why can't I fix myself? And I was having those moments and ended up in the traditional, Western medical system where I went into a doctor and they're like, oh, start taking these pain meds, this anti-inflammatory and this steroid. And it's like this, my body doesn't respond well to any of this. Why? What if this isn't what it needs? And they, I had a doctor say, well, we just want to try this for 3 months and then we'll tell you what your diagnosis is if it works. And I was like, well, that's, how does that make sense at all? It doesn't to me. What about nutrition? What about other environmental things? There's testing we can do to even see if I carry this trait. Can we do the testing? Nope, can't do that. And so
Wait, he said no to testing?
Yeah, the doctor said no to testing.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it was great. So finally, I got a referral to a hematologist at the Rocky Mountain Cancer Centers. And I went in and told her kind of my story, and she asked for a lot of history. We went back. I had 2 miscarriages before my boys, and we went back through all of that, and she wanted medical records back all the way that far. And she ended up, I had to go into her office 3 weeks in a row because she was pulling so much blood work that
good for her.
It took 3 different trips to get all the blood out of me that she wanted safely. And at the end, what she said is, none of this stuff is what's wrong. You looking at the nutrition pieces, at the environmental toxins, all of that stuff, you're on the right path. Keep going. And I was like, all right, well, if this is the right path for me, it's probably also the right path for my clients who are struggling with this thing. So how do I help myself? And then how do I take that to my clients?
So you what did you search to find IFM?
So I started looking into the research for nutrition and autoimmune disorder, nutrition and rheumatoid arthritis, nutrition and lupus, and like those little searches that you do. And the first actually introduction I had to functional medicine was through a guy named James Maskell. He had a podcast, and I happened to come across the YouTube channel that it was on, and it was James Maskell and Sachin Patel actually having a conversation. And I signed up for the email list and started getting the emails, and then he wrote a book called The Evolution of Medicine, read the book, found the Institute for Functional Medicine through that book, and started taking classes.
Yeah. IFM is, like, their trainings are intensive.
Yeah.
And you have to test and everything for that. So, okay. Now, along your story, your health journey, what did you find to be the most beneficial thing you did to improve your healing?
One of the primary things, and it's something I'm sure a lot of people don't really think about because we get told all the time these things are healthy for us, is I really went for 90 days with no processed foods at all and no grains. I just took those completely out of my diet and said, I'm going to get rid of all of these things that are considered inflammatory, and see then as I add things back in, what happens and how my body reacts and responds. So it's kind of like an an elimination diet, but I didn't know that was what it was called at the time.
Yeah.
And then just when I was adding foods back in, seeing, what was happening with my heart rate, what was happening with my body weight, like how much would my body weight change in a day if everything else stayed the same, but I tried a new food. Those kinds of things to see where I was struggling really and what was creating it. So that was the first thing that really got me to the point where I could actually not have pain every day. And then the next biggest thing I would say was I did a year-long, really slow detox process using the Cell Core product line. And they say you can do it in 6 months. I spread it out over, it was, I think, 10. Because I was worried about how I didn't want to have any detox reactions. Because I know, I've seen people go through those where they're just the nausea, vomiting, shakes, sweats, all of that. I didn't want to do that because
Can we just key on this in for a minute? Because so many people think that a detox is like 21 days.
Oh no.
30 days.
No.
That is, I mean, maybe you fast track it that way, or that's the way that you maintain your health. But if you are chronically ill, that is not what's going to get you results fast.
And
when you do detox, it needs to take time, and you need to do it right.
And if you've been chronically ill, especially, like you don't want, and especially if you're somebody who's been down that medical path of like they've given you every drug under the sun, like you don't want to rush that process because the reactions that you have will be more severe, right? Like you don't want to dump a bunch of toxins into the bloodstream, into the liver, and say good luck.
Yeah.
You want to support it slowly through that process so that it's a process that okay, I can do this again and have success and have less pain and have a lot more energy and be able to focus and be able to engage with my family. Because, I mean, you've got young kids. At the time when I was doing this, my kids
I was just going to ask you, like, when you were doing this, how old were your kids?
4. So it was, there was a lot going on with 2 4-year-old boys running around the house, right? And it was in a business that was in transition and all of those things. So, yeah, it was a struggle, and I didn't want to feel miserable because I didn't have the time to feel miserable.
Yeah, so 1, it was motivation that made you take the action, and 2, how did you incorporate an anti-inflammatory diet as a mom with 2 young boys?
That, I think, is something where a lot of people disagree with me. So also, both of my children are on the spectrum, and one more severe than the other. But I was never a parent to make 2 meals. People ate what I was eating. And it was a conversation I had with my husband at the beginning of saying, like, look, this is all the things that are going wrong. You know how I've been feeling. I need to do this for me, but I can't make it more stressful. And so I need your support. And he's like, whatever you need. Like, obviously, you keep this house running. Whatever you need, we'll do it. And so I just changed the foods in the house. And there were some things that the boys were still eating that I was not eating, but there were things that they were eating before that I was not eating. Like I would buy them organic yogurts that they would eat, but I've had a dairy allergy since I was little, so I don't eat dairy. So there were things like that that were still in their normal diet, but for the most part, they were just eating what I was eating. And so my kids even at that age, had a very varied palate. I mean, artichokes was one of the favorite foods kind of thing.
Really?
Yeah. So I think I was, and I don't want to say that I was fortunate because it was something even from, I made all of their baby food. So
You were very deliberate in all of it from the beginning of time. So when you changed your diet, it wasn't like you changed 98% of your diet. It was probably
it was
50%.
yeah, it was like, okay, we're not having rice with the tacos that we're making, and we're not having tortillas with it. We're just having like rice, and we're having the main taco meat with seasoning on it, and we're having a vegetable and a piece of fruit to go with it. So it was just taking out the grains, really, that we would normally have had with that meal. Um, and then for breakfast, not making pancakes or French toast or waffles or that kind of thing, but having,
Breakfast is so hard because it's always like loaded with grains.
well, and so I've tried to change even my kids' opinion on breakfast, and my spouse and my clients. Like this morning for breakfast, last night we had pulled fajita meat, basically, that I had cooked in the crock pot all day. And so for breakfast this morning, I had eggs and that fajita meat for breakfast with a salad and some fresh berries.
For breakfast, huh? So it's almost like a lunch, but you had it for breakfast.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I just tend to skip breakfast. It's like I don't really like the foods, and I get so tired of eggs.
You don't want to
But
skip
when
breakfast.
I eat it, it's like eggs, bacon, sausage, and that's like our sustenance, our main breakfast.
Okay, woman to woman, especially because you're like in your mid-30s, right? Early 30s, mid-30s. Stop skipping breakfast. It's messing with your hormones.
Yeah.
And that, like, all women, stop skipping breakfast. It's messing with your hormones. You need to get like 30. So the best way to stay lean for the longest amount of time is 30 grams of protein within an hour of waking up and 30 minutes of walking.
I'm getting better at the bike. I got on the bike 2 times this week out of the last 3 days.
That's awesome.
I'm making it. My problem right now is, I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and then a baby, and none of them have ever slept.
Oh.
My baby right now, we wake up about every hour.
Oh no.
And so by the time I like wake up, like I'm still exhausted. And then my mid-afternoon hits, and it's just like I could really go for a nap right now, but I'm going to plow through this and continue with my day. So usually by the time 7 or 8 hits, or I have to do, okay, it's like, all right, I've woken up so many times this last 7 days, like I have to take a nap. And one of the reasons why I go get my eyelashes done is so it requires me to lay down and do nothing for 2 hours and take a nap.
Good for you. It's
like I pay $100 to go take a nap, but it's okay because it forces me to do it.
It's self-care with a purpose.
So tidbits, number 1, hopefully you don't have to change your diet too much, but when you do change your diet, make it an entire family change.
Yes.
That's the easiest thing to do. No, don't cook 2 meals, one for you and one for everybody else. Like, heck, everybody else could use the benefits of it too. They just haven't gone as sick to really dial in those changes yet. So we have 90 days of no processed foods. We have a very slow detox process. And I know your big topic today is you really want to stress balance.
Yes. So a lot of people assume that because I don't eat a ton of processed foods and I don't really encourage people to eat processed foods, that I'm like, never do this. And I think there's a lot of misconception around that. Like, I want people to really understand that you have to live life in a balance, because if you aren't doing that, then at some point you will either alienate people in your life or you'll fall off and go exact opposite, right? Like you'll make a 180-degree switch and then you'll start having that disease process pop up. So if somebody asks me, when's the last time you had ice cream? I eat coconut ice cream, if you consider that ice cream, and it was 3 weeks ago. But that's also because my husband asked me if I would do a specific meal plan with him for 5 weeks. And I was like, sure, I'll do it with you. So I'm doing it to support him. I don't need to do it, but he wants support, so I'm supporting him. So 3 weeks ago, I had ice cream. My kids made acai bowls at home yesterday because they figured out that it's way cheaper to make it at home than to go to the store and buy them at $13 a pop. So they had honey and chocolate chips in their acai bowl yesterday. Do I care? No. So we really have to figure out like what our absolute no's are and what the things are that like you can create, like this is okay for specific occasions. This is okay for a couple times a week. This is okay for every day. And I think that's the part where people kind of need to give themselves grace as well and not assign a value to food. Does that make sense? Like foods aren't good or bad. It's, are they giving you something you need? Is this something, ask yourself the question, is this for nutrition? Is this for entertainment? Or am I bored? And if I'm bored, we should probably always
say those three things again. Is this for nutrition?
Nutrition, entertainment, or boredom.
Oh, I like it.
If it's boredom, we should find a different option for the boredom because that just leads to negative behaviors altogether. But if it's, I'm at a party and these are the foods that are sitting out and normally I wouldn't eat this, but I'm here and it's, Father's Day. Is it really that big of a deal for you to have one day off of your normal meal plan? Absolutely not. If it's, we rotate family dinner. So sometimes it's at my mother-in-law's house, sometimes at my sister-in-law's house, sometimes at my house. My house is probably always the cleanest in terms of eating, but I always also serve a dessert and we have family dinner every week. So it's, we're having dessert every week. But
I'm with you on this. As you're speaking my language, because what I feel like is if you were to take something away for the rest of your life, one, you're never going to get started on that process.
Right.
And two, because you took it away, you're going to binge it at some other time.
Yes. And that's what we don't want.
Yeah.
Right? Like and it's the same. I have people are like, oh, you would probably never find junk food in your house. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know what your consideration of junk food is, but there's chips and salsa in my pantry. Because if somebody wants chips and salsa, I'd rather them, and the boys actually weigh it out. Because I'm like, have a serving and understand what you're eating and why you're eating it. And that way, long term what that starts to look like. And so we have a food scale and the boys will weigh it out and they know exactly what a serving looks like. And so they don't overeat. And so then they can still have a snack that's junk food and eat a full meal for dinner.
My rule of thumb was my kids are still little and they know that's like, hey, bud, did you eat healthy food today? Like, how much healthy food did you eat? Because you have to eat a lot of healthy food and only a little bit of junky food.
Yeah. And that's the balance part, right? That's the part that you have to, because but the same design, if you meet those people who are like, oh, I didn't have sugar until I went to college. And then what do they look like at the end of their second year of college? Because all they eat at college is junk food. Because at home, they were never allowed that. And so it's like that balance, you have to find it. And you want to teach it just like you're teaching your kids healthy food versus foods that don't make us healthy. But even that, it's like that balance of how do we find a way so that we're not labeling it as good or bad, right? Like, I want you to eat things that I tell the boys, did we eat foods that made our muscles grow or made our brains function well today? And what were
How old are your boys now? You said 2010?
They're 13. Almost 14.
Okay. That's good heading into high school. I've done a lot with track because my brothers all run track, and so the high school coaches would have me come in and I would talk about nutrition and actually sports recovery and all the things, the myths out there. And one of the worst, in fact, the worst scenario I've ever seen of anorexia was from a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And at school, he saw that somebody was being made fun of for being fat. And so he decided that he was never going to be fat. And he joined the high school cross country team and was running ridiculous miles at 12 years old, and then maybe eating like 500 calories, maybe.
I know.
And it was interesting because I gave my presentation and his mom came because she wanted to be there to see what we did. I mean, it was like a 3-hour drive to the mountains where they were doing this camp. So mom came up and I did my presentation, and the only thing he got out of my presentation was that he needed to drink skim milk. And which is ironic because I never said a word about dairy. I never said a word about milk. I never said a word about 1%, 2% whole or skim. But in his mind, it was so twisted that was what he got out of it, was that he could only drink skim milk now. And so one of the things that I did with him, with his mom, was I brought up like, I went to the store and was like, bought every protein bar, every energy bar, like everything I could. And I laid it out on the tables and I made them all take one that looked good to them and then taste it. And for this kid, I had him taste like 8 out of 8 of them that were left. He had to taste each one and then tell his mom which one was his favorite. So that way he could eat it before and after his runs.
Yeah.
Like just something small, but something like, hey, I really like the taste of this. But it was so interesting to see how much he had twisted things in his head. So I'm glad that
but I think
you
it's
don't
important.
just assume that the girls have the issues, because there's a lot of boys. And I could tell you another story too about a boy. So just take that mindset out that it's a girl problem, because it's not.
Oh, it's definitely not. I mean, and it's one of those things that I think we always label things as like, this is only a problem for boys, this is only a problem for girls. But really, in that age group, like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, there is so much that they both have in common that needs to be addressed on both sides, and body image is a huge one. And I think it is slightly, and I'm a mom of boys, so maybe I feel like this because I'm a mom of boys, but I was a girl, so I've been through this on that side too. But I really think that they don't do enough conversations around what healthy is, and probably partly because they honestly don't know. I mean, if you look at our food guide pyramid, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's definitely been bought and paid for. But then also, you see these Instagram posts where girls have like a 6-pack and, they're this big around, and guys always look a certain way, and these kids think that they're supposed to look like that too. And it's like, well, no, you're growing. Like, there are points in your time where you're growing, where you're going to put on weight because your body needs that energy. Your body's going to need that fat storage to be able to grow up. And so we need you to have that insulation layer, because it's then going to allow you to have enough nutrition, enough energy to let the bones grow. And I don't think they explain that.
Yeah. But like you said, it's just balance in all things. And one of my biggest pet peeves about our industry, and specifically, is that they make it so that you feel like food is the enemy.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's our friend. But because we're told, don't eat this, don't eat that, look like this, look like that, exercise this way, exercise that way. There's no balance to any of it. It's either you're completely over here on this spectrum, or you're completely over here on this spectrum. When in reality, it's like, no, unhealthy, healthy. Like, eat more healthy foods than you do unhealthy foods.
Right.
Or my household, junky foods.
Yeah.
But I don't ever take them away, because then they go to their friend's house and they binge.
Right.
Or like I've seen some family members where they're very strict on what they do at home with their kids, and then when their kids are not at their house, like, they binge on the junky food. And next thing I know, my entire thing of M&Ms are gone, because they just consume and consume and consume and consume. So if we take things away, we just want them more.
Yeah. And especially when they don't get them often. I mean, that's...
And as kids too. Like they're going to go to their friend's house, they're going to go to school, they're going to go sneak off to the gas station or whatever it is. So it's just a very healthy balance in all things. Food is our friend and not our enemy. All foods are our friend. If, like Marci said, if you believe something is bad, then it's going to be bad.
Right.
If you believe something is good, it's going to be good. And it's all about your belief system. And the way I've heard this is like swear words. Some people think swear words are bad, and some people think it's just a regular words and vocabulary. Same thing with food.
Yeah.
If you believe red meat is bad and rice is good, then that's what it's going to be for you. But if you believe a balance of the two on your plate is the best, then that's great too. So find your balance and don't go to one side of the spectrum, swing to the sides of the spectrum. At least that's what our two pieces are. And as patients in the functional medicine space, again, it's a fault of our industry to preach and to teach that you have to be, 100% this way or else you're failing. You're not doing it right. This is why your health is bad. When here we're both moms and we both have kids, and we're like, I'm going to eat a Hershey's Kiss after dinner because I just need that one bite of sweetness, but that's all I need.
Yeah. And that's, I put most, again, not right now because I'm doing this thing with my husband, but I usually put like a tablespoon of honey in my coffee. That's my like sweet for the day. Because to me, I don't need it. I can drink my coffee black. I have been for 3 weeks now. It's fine. But I like it. I just like that in my morning coffee. Like it's just, heck, I would drink just the honey in hot water. If people wouldn't look at me like I was crazy, because I just like the way it feels. I like the way it tastes. And so that's my, but then like you're having a Hershey's Kiss, I would rather have dark chocolate, like the baking chocolate with like almond butter on it after dinner. I want that like bitter with the creaminess of the almond butter, because that to me is amazing.
And as women, just so you know, like you're going to crave different foods in different periods of your cycle.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, to say that my Marci's doing a 5-day week or a 5-week thing, like that's pretty impressive, because she's going through an entire cycle amongst those 5 weeks, and her diet and her appetite's going to change, whereas his is not. So have some grace on yourself. Like there are literally times in your period where you're going to crave carbs. It's natural.
Yes.
There are times in your period in your cycle where you're going to crave more meats. And there are times in the period where you're going to crave foods that you typically wouldn't eat. And it's all hormone based, and you're not crazy. You're not going to add on an extra pound if you ate 10 chips while you're watching the Super Bowl or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Give yourself more grace. I think that's the topic of this episode today, is give yourself more grace. Find that balance. And that balance is not 100% swinging one way or the other. There's a balance to everything. So, Marci, where can they learn more about you and find you?
So the best place is probably my website, which is drmarcicm.com. And then if you're on social media platforms, I'm pretty much everywhere. So TikTok is where I put most of my content. But you can also find it on
TikTok girl, huh?
Yeah. I don't know why. It just was an easy, for me, it felt easier. I had less resistance to TikTok than I did to Facebook or Instagram.
If it's easy for you, do it. That's my role in business. Easy and fun. Has to be easy and fun. Okay, so drmarcicm.com and then Dr. Marci on TikTok.
Yeah.
All right, thank you much.
Thank you.
Hey, if you're new here, welcome aboard. If you're coming back, welcome back. I'm coming back as well. In fact, we're going to have new episodes every Wednesday right here on the Beyond the Diagnosis podcast. If you love what you just listened to and love what you've been listening to, I would be honored to have you leave a review. Leave it on the place where you listen to your podcast, so that way more people can find this podcast and get answers from their blood work as well. I'm Dr. Kylie, and I'll see you next week.